What is up, everyone? It is absolutely nerve-wracking to be doing a solo stream without DGen on his channel, but big guy's having a date night, so here I am doing this by myself. So I understand we're on about a 15-second delay, so hopefully give you guys some time to get in here. I see there's a couple of y'all in here. I can see the chat today instead of having to look at it on my phone. This is pretty cool to actually have control of the streaming, so feel free to drop some questions in chat. I already have a couple on my phone that I want to go over. So I guess let's just jump into it for tonight's game. It's pretty gross. I guess like everyone's narrative around this game is that it's going to be gross. These teams aren't necessarily fun to watch, but I think they aren't necessarily defensive juggernauts either. And so to the extent like everyone wants to play a low scoring, grind it out, defense is going to be whatever, 15% owned in the captain, something gross like that. I think I can play the other narrative that these teams are able to move the ball and the offenses, despite not being good, are better than really bad defenses. And so I guess jumping into the weather, I guess a lot of people have said like this is going to be windy and bad weather, all that, but it really looks like by the time the game actually kicks off that the wind will have died down some, and it'll still be, 10 mile an hour sustained, 12, 15 mile an hour gust, something like that, but not nearly as bad as it is during the day right now. And so I've heard people say like, oh, I've got friends there that say it's really windy out right now. And it's like, well, yeah, fuck. But I mean, that's not means it's not going to be windy tonight. And so, looking at the super forecast, it looks like the winds die off quite a bit as the night goes on. So, I'm a big fucking, no, okay, yeah, there we go. And so, looking over at the simulator, I have run these sims a few different ways. I guess some of the first things I did is what we talked about in other videos is dropping the quarterback rushing share. Now I did still keep Fields as fairly high, but I did reduce it some, and just kind of distributing that a little more throughout the players. Brian Robinson, it was announced, is going to be the starting back, so that may lead to slightly higher ownership for him, but I also think it's pretty fair to ascribe him, I think I've got him 58% of the workload here. I think that's pretty reasonable. And Antonio Gibson may not even see this 22%. Honestly, it sounds like he may be like returning kickoffs and punts, and who knows what actual workload he gets carrying the ball. So this may even be slightly skewed more towards Gibson than it should be. And at $8,600, I just don't see a path to playing Antonio Gibson. So I probably am going to be mostly a full fade on Gibson, although like I say that and watch him fall into the end zone twice on like 2 gross plays. So we'll see. I think I would much favor playing Brian Robinson over Antonio Gibson in Washington. Is efficient and is able to score type game scripts. So that's how I've distributed here. I've changed just a little bit over here to increase John Bates's target share. I think with Logan Thomas out, I think that he was used pretty consistently as the tight end in passing situations there. And I think he's had a couple spike games, so I actually wouldn't mind giving him a little bit more target share. I think everyone is going to chase Diami Brown, even with a Q tag. His performance last week, but he didn't play. He played actually less. I was going to say he didn't play any more than, but he actually played less than Cam Sims. And so I'm not sure that I love this split here. I may actually want to give Dax just nothing. Like, why do I even want him in my sim? Give Diami, I'll keep him at that, but I'm going to give this extra to Cam. So Cam ran more routes than Diami. He was targeted more than Diami, but Diami had like 2 spike plays, right? And got in the end zone and was like the nuts play in GPPs on Sunday. So with Dotson out, I think Diami Brown is a better replacement for Dotson's skill set, and I'd rather play I'd rather play Cam Sims than Diami. But honestly, I'd probably just rather play Curtis Samuel or Terry more than both. I also think you can take shots on Cole Turner, and I may want to give him a slightly higher. They actually had one design play for him last week. It was a touchdown, but that was all we heard from him. So maybe they build on that momentum. I wouldn't actually mind maybe docking Amari Rodgers and giving this to Colt. And just say maybe he builds on last week a little bit. I mean, that's not really much of a target share, but it's like things are pretty spread out here. So that's also going to make what GPPs will be tough, right? Is trying to find which pieces actually are successful in these offenses. And then coming over to the Chicago side of the ball, I dropped Fields just a little bit. Does Wentz get benched tonight? No, I don't think Wentz gets benched tonight. I know Ron was out there bashing him in the media, and I guess like he has a torn shoulder muscle, so I guess like it would be at least a good excuse to bench him, right? But I don't know. What is it? Tyler Heineke would be the backup. I'm not going to play Tyler Heineke, but if you think there's a chance Wentz gets benched, I guess that's viable, although it probably wouldn't happen until later in the game, right? They've already said he's going to start, so, or I guess we have until an hour and a half before kickoff, but presumably he's going to start. I probably wouldn't play any Tyler Heineke. I probably would stick with Wentz. I think in the games that you think the Commanders struggle, I'd rather just play Bears or the Bears defense and then not Wentz, and then you can either focus on like someone like Curtis Samuel that has short A-dot targets, average depth of targets, so someone that plays like short routes. We don't have to worry about Wentz necessarily being like good. He can hit Curtis Samuel, and then Curtis Samuel can do Curtis Samuel things, or you play the running backs in that case. Or like a kicker. We love a kicker on gross slates, but I think everyone's going to love a kicker. All right, so go back to Chicago side of the ball. I didn't change too much other than they had Cole Kmet getting like a pretty high target share, and he just really hasn't been that involved. So let's see what he was before I dropped him. It was 15, so I guess I didn't drop him that much, but I dropped his touchdown rate. They just haven't been using him that much. And so I think I gave Equanimous St. Brown a little bit of his touchdown share, and Khalil Herbert a little bit of his touchdown share, and that was probably it. I probably gave it to Velus Jones, who also got a touchdown last week, and like maybe look to build on that performance a little bit. So those are the changes I made. Right now I have the generic 19-19 implied team totals, which I don't know. I've run this a bunch of different ways. I think I like actually giving the Commanders some points, and the Bears trailing scripts has been like my favorite builds. Something like, I don't know, whatever, 27-21, like a fairly high scoring game. That seems like a lot. 24-19. All right. And then run the Sims. So you guys have probably already seen my leverage and all that kind of stuff. Speaking of, let me pull that up. Oh, don't open up there. I should have had these things prepared. These are things that, new streamers have to learn. So I'll pull up my leverage for the 3 sims I ran earlier, but we can compare it to the sim I ran here, and this should be pretty similar. I think this is a slight variant of the third script that I have in mind. Sorry, y'all. This is riveting. Let me check the chat. I can answer a question. 2016 final score. Book it. Let's see. Let's go back and run that. Was that the Commanders winning? I hope so. Let's book it. Let's see. That shouldn't change too much in the Sims. It's only reducing like 8 points off the total. So one of the other questions actually that I wanted to respond to in text or in chat that or was in a Discord message earlier that I didn't get a chance to respond to was whether playing Fields at captain was too aggressive as the only captain you were going to play tonight. And so I'm never opposed to playing only one captain. I think if you have a feeling, you should definitely just go for it and play your one captain you've got a feeling on. That said, Fields is like pretty scary to do that with. Fields is not one of my favorite captains, and I probably wouldn't be 100%ing Fields if I was going to 100% somebody, but I play aggressive, and I'm never opposed to someone else playing aggressive. So, happy day if you want to go for it. I think I wouldn't encourage you to do it with Fields, but I'd encourage you to play aggressively. So, let's do it. So it's pretty interesting the way the captain and flex leverage broke out, with some players being like pretty good flex plays, absolutely terrible captain plays, and vice versa. So this is just the default inputs. Actually, I don't really like the way that one came out. Let's go to the my anticipated usage, and then we can look at it compared to a shootout, which is actually my favorite way to build tonight. So flex, we see guys like John Bates, the tight end, who's going to step in and play Thomas's role, be the highest leverage flex position. Brian Robinson, who's going to start at running back, pretty interesting. And then J.D. McKissick, who I think you can play in a Chicago scores build, but I probably wouldn't play him otherwise. He's been relegated to a pretty clear third down only, passing down only type role. But But I think he makes a ton of sense if you think the Bears can get out early and Washington is forced into those passing downs way more frequently. Cam Sims, who I think the field will completely ignore because they'll be focused on the spike week we got last week. And so, I would actually be pretty interested in playing Cam Sims. Curtis Samuel is lower leverage in the flex, but like fairly extreme, the second highest leverage at captain. So moving over to look, what's the biggest negative leverage? Darnell Mooney is like the biggest negative leverage, and Justin Fields. I think Cole Kmet, no surprise, basically all the passing from a team that doesn't want to pass, right? But if you think that this team either is trailing and forced to pass and you want to play these guys, or conversely, you think they get out to an early lead by having success through these guys, then those are the J.D. McKissick, I think that especially the latter there, is the J.D. McKissick viable builds. And so over to captain leverage on the sim here. David Montgomery, if you think Chicago has success, I think they showed last week they want to just turn him back into their workhorse back. Like he stepped back from injury and just immediately stepped right back into that lead role, which is pretty sad for Khalil Herbert and my best ball teams. So I think I wouldn't play Montgomery and Herbert together. I think you can play Herbert, but it would be in either Washington gets out to a huge lead, and so we don't need Montgomery. They're just getting blown out, and he'll sit down in that case. And you get Khalil Herbert maybe more involved. Or if you think Montgomery re-aggravates an injury, which is like a script I never really want to play for. Looking at this real quick. What would be the most contrarian play rostering both QBs or rostering no QB? Tonight on a slate where I don't think people like the QBs, I think rostering both QBs would be more contrarian. I think you're going to have a lot of builds tonight that want to do kickers, defenses, like one or two skill position players, I guess 2 or 3 skill position players in that case, and 3 out of the 4 defensive kickers probably is like pretty popular. So I can see no quarterback being way overowned today, especially because these are quarterbacks that people don't necessarily like or want to play. Even though Wentz has dropped back and thrown a ton, but the news with his shoulder injury is pretty concerning. But I think I'm still going to gamble on Wentz a fair bit tonight and just hope that they can get it done. So the next highest is Curtis Samuel in the captain. We talked about he's like not that positively leveraged, but still positive in the flex, but really nicely positively leveraged in the captain. Brian Robinson is just across the board. Looks like he won't be owned. Although I worry that the ownership is going to get steamed up from earlier when this was calculated. So I'm a little concerned about his ownership. I know there was that tweet that was sent in the Discord where they basically said he's going to be the starting running back, and so I wonder if people get like just a little jazzed to play him. And plus, it's a pretty good feel good story coming back off multiple gunshot wounds to play 6 weeks later is pretty incredible. 5 weeks later, I guess, last week. So those are really the only like major leverage spots I see. Justin Fields in the captain is negatively leveraged, but again, I think that's because a lot of the inputs assume that Chicago doesn't have success in the passing game. And so if you have a different feeling, I'm pairing him with Darnell Mooney. He's his highest target earner. He also has like the biggest ADOT, and so you have the biggest volatility for someone like that in terms of catching a spike week. But moving over to the shootout script, not a ton changes because if you assume a lot of the same, I included all the same inputs, but you see these guys stretch it even more, right? So these guys were like slightly more, 8.9 to 8.4, so slightly less there, slightly less. So all the guys actually are slightly less optimal in the captain. That's interesting why that is. Maybe they're more so in the flex. Brian Robinson, 17% in the flex. Yeah, I guess just way more often skill position players. You just have to fit in more skill position players. Interesting. So probably the cheaper skill position players, as you score more points, you just have to have them. So Cam Sims, 12%. Let's see. Yeah, versus 8.9%, right? So that salary savings, he becomes optimal way more often when more points are scored. So that's something that's pretty interesting to consider is like you need a low priced value when more points are scored. Whereas when less points are scored, you're getting your value most likely from your kickers, your tight end, or kickers and your defenses in a low scoring script. Excuse me. What's the big guy say? I gotta stay hydrated. Is there a universe in which you roster N'Keal Harry? Yeah, if I'm playing the big field, I think pretty much all of the guys are in play. So let's see what I have flex ownership. Some of the lowest flex ownership. So I'd basically be looking to play all of these guys. Let's see who I'm not playing. I'm not going to play this Tristan Ebner, Traven Wesco, Blingham. I'm not gonna play any of those guys. I think that actually N'Keal Harry would probably be the lowest. I'd probably play N'Keal Harry up. I think they're all viable. I don't know who this wide receiver on a team that doesn't like wide receivers, so I'd kill that person. I'd kill Amir, but N'Keal Harry, Velez Jones, Cole Turner, Cam Sims, John Bates, Dante Pettis, Dimey Brown. I think are all viable. Although Dimey Brown is probably my least favorite of that group. One, he's expensive as fuck at $5,000, and two, I think you pay to chase last week's volume a lot. You can see he's got negative leverage because people are paying to chase that volume. So, like, can people have 2 spike weeks in a row? Absolutely, but I probably just lose. That's fine. Okay, so I'm trying to think what the other questions that people had asked me, and I hate to look at my phone. So if you asked me a question earlier and I didn't respond to you, please shoot it back in the chat. Thank you. If I think Washington wins and run a 4-2 Washington, is it better to run the Washington player in the captain or run a bear like Mooney or Montgomery in the captain? So both are viable in that case, and 4-2 is actually my favorite way to build tonight. I've been building rosters, and we can actually talk about roster construction here in 1 second, but let's answer your question first. You can build it either way, right? And so, like, how that works is, someone can get there in junk time and be the highest scoring player. I gotta stop touching my thing or else my camera shakes. Sorry about that, y'all. Any player can be the highest scoring player, right? And so if they're trailing and Mooney's catching jump time touchdowns or whatever, he can end up as your optimal in a 2-4 or a 4-2. So I think it depends on how you go. If you're playing Wentz as captain, I think it makes sense if you're playing Wentz, I think it makes sense for him to be your captain because you assume he can play like 2 or 3 pass catchers. You're playing Wentz with 2 or 3 pass catchers. The ball gets spread, points get scored, and then you're running it back with 2 Bears. You can also, if you're playing a 2-4 and you're playing the Washington defense, you probably want to play a kicker at that point because you probably don't have 2 skill position players getting there. Unless you could do a wide receiver running back maybe, especially a pass catching running back. If you think Montgomery gets 4 or 5 targets because PPR friendly scoring, he could possibly get there. But I'm not answering your question. So I think I like either way. For me personally, I'm playing more Washington skill position players as captains. And 4-2 is my preferred build. So I will have a lot of Washington skill position 4-2s, and I will join you at the top of the leaderboard. But back to roster construction, I think it's really hard for 3-3s to differentiate most weeks, and I think this week's probably no exception with there being basically a pick 'em even spread. People are going to want to build balanced rosters, and so I try to stay away from 3-3s. I'll build some 3-3s, but it's always my lowest, or depending on if I think 1-5s are viable, I'll do more 1-5s. But on a week like this, I don't really think 1-5s are viable, and we can talk about why in 1 second. But so my lowest one will be 1-5 this week. My second will be 3-3s. My highest will be 4-2s and 2-4s. So when we refer to those numbers, we're talking about 4 from the favorite team, 2 from the not favorite team. In this case, since their teams are pick 'em, it's super confusing. So we'll just refer to 4 as the team you have from your captain, 2 from the team you have from your other side. So 4 players with 4, the 4-1 being your captain, 2 from the non-captain side. I think will be a fairly common build. I think the 2 with the 2 being the captain, 4 the other way will be a less common build. So if you wanted to go that way and do something like Mooney captain Fields, or even Fields captain Mooney, and then 4 Redskins, I think that are Commanders. I guess that makes sense. But yeah, so I try to stay away from 3-3s just because they're generally way over-owned, and it's hard to differentiate building a 3-3. I think 5-1s and 1-5s this week are not as viable because I don't see either team necessarily just blowing the doors off the other, such that you can have 5 players be optimal on one side. But that said, if you do see one of these teams blowing the doors off the other, you should build a 5-1 because it'll be super low owned this week. I don't know that a 1-5 is super viable because no one on this offense is getting an extreme high target share. Outside of maybe Montgomery, if you think Montgomery can have a vintage Montgomery game, you could captain Montgomery and play 5 Commanders. That's sort of interesting. But again, I don't know that there's a world in which 5 Commanders can get there. So I favor the 4-2 or 2-4 builds today. Kim, my crazy take of the day is a Washington onslaught tonight. Well, as much as they can, 5-1 Washington build. All right, yeah, you will have very limited path to the top, right? If there ends up being a Washington onslaught and 5 Washington skill position players can get there, or even a kicker, I guess you could throw, or defense, if you really think it's a true onslaught. So 5 Washington players, period, can get there. you have a pretty small chance. Like I would guess, like 4 or 5% of the field would roster a 5-1. Probably less than that. Maybe like 3% of the field roster a 5-1. McLaren or Samuel better at captain? So I want to say McLaren, right? I think DJ and I both love Terry probably more than we should. Terry is more of a boom bust, and so for Showdown, I also like Terry, or just DFS generally, I like Terry. Samuel has shown he is back, right? He has turned 3-yard targets into obscene stat lines on the regular. And so, I hate to say that's going to stop today, right? So I think both of them are pretty good captains. Let me see what I think in my just standard build. I think, Samuel excuse me, was significantly higher leveraged. Terry's down here, actually negatively leveraged, break even, basically. So I think that assumes a pretty standard distribution. I think there's always spikes for Terry, and I think Terry's spikes are pretty significant. So Terry's definitely a viable captain, and I'll probably burn more money than I should on Terry captain. But just looking at the Sims, and computers are smarter than me, it looks like Curtis Samuel is a better play than captain. Y'all got anything else? I don't know how to stream by myself. I can't just talk to myself anymore. Can you run Fields with just Chicago kicker and get there? If you think he does it himself on the thing, he has 2 rushing touchdowns and that's all they get, most definitely. I think that's a fairly narrow range of outcomes, but again, this team doesn't want to throw the ball. They may throw 20 passes tonight, so does a pass catcher not get there in 20 passes? I don't know. Some of these cheap pass catchers, let's see. Let's look at just Chicago's pass catchers. You could definitely, N'Keal Harry can pay off with almost nothing, especially in a low-scoring game, right? And in PPR, if he gets 2 targets for 35 yards, he may end up optimal, or 2 catches for 35 yards at $200 in a low-scoring game. St. Brown's pretty interesting at 4,800. I think he can end up getting some targets. And then Mooney's so fucking expensive. It makes it so hard for him to get there at 7,600 on a team that doesn't want to throw the ball. And so I think if I'm playing Mooney, I'm probably playing with the captain because on the weeks where he spikes enough to be optimal in your flex versus when he gets there to be your captain, I don't know that they're that different. I think those circles almost overlap, right? So I think I much prefer taking shots on Mooney and the captain. He's still negatively leveraged there, which is not great, but he's not nearly as bad as he is in the flex. And like I said, I think the range of outcomes that make him optimal in either position, given his salary, I think he just ends up being your optimal captain just as frequently as he would your flex. So I know the sim doesn't quite say that, but in my mind, the way his outcomes get distributed, when he spikes, he's just going to be your optimal captain. He's not going to be optimal in flex. And then a 7-point performance at $7,600 probably isn't going to make him get there. It'll just be a different construction that pays off. Let's see. How many captain spots should I consider in 20 max contests? I'm thinking of 1, but open to more if you think leverage is needed. Yeah, so I touched on it real quick. I'm not sure if you were on, Jim, but I think it's totally viable, and I fully support doing 1 captain in a 20 max especially. I think that's a great way to get leverage. It's a great way to play aggressively, and I would never discourage anyone not to play aggressively. That said, I don't love Fields as a captain, and I don't love Fields as my only captain. I think he actually makes a fair amount of sense as a captain. I guess you'd probably have to play him in that case. I guess unless you think he really does run his legs with 2 touchdowns or whatever, but I'd want to play him with at least 1 pass catcher, I think. I think that it's just a really narrow range of outcomes for him and a kicker only to get there. So how many would I consider in a 2 max? Me personally, I'd probably end up playing 2 or 3 just because I'm a semi-risk adverse bitch sometimes. No, bitch, that's derogatory. I don't mean that. But I can be risk adverse sometimes. So I'd probably play 2 or 3, but I would never discourage anyone from playing aggressively, just playing 1. Brian, who's the one guy you're definitely going to play, John? Oh, okay, let's see. The one guy I'm definitely going to play, I think it's kind of to say Brian Robinson, right? Because I think everyone's going to play Brian Robinson tonight, so I won't say Brian Robinson. John Bates is the one guy I'm definitely going to play as a flex. I think tight ends just have a way of creeping up on these showdown slates, which is kind of a stupid way to handle analysis, but single game slates generally, a tight end can get there fairly frequently, just like the spike nature of the position, right? Plus, he's filling in a role. He's only 3,000. I think he will go generally overlooked by the field. So I'll definitely be playing John Bates in my single entry high dollar stuff. The one guy I'm definitely not going to play, I think I cannot afford to play Antonio Gibson. I think he's too expensive for, even in the offseason, before Brian Robinson got shot, we were seeing his role being phased. There was rumors that he just wasn't favored with that coaching staff. Now, we didn't see Ron come out and just toss him fucking under the bus like we did with Wentz, but I think the Gibson would be the one player I just can't play this week. Any fear that they ease Brian Robinson in tonight, limit his carries? I don't know. So, there was talk last week before the game that he was going to be limited, right, coming in. And it is a short week, and so there's always that concern. But there was announced that he's going to be their starting back, and I don't know that they would necessarily make him their starting back if they were going to put him on a snap share. I think he's going to get run. My guess, unless we hear beforehand that there is some sort of intent to limit him, I think I got to assume, at least for purposes of burning my $1,000 to $1,500 on Showdown tonight, that Brian Robinson's going to be the dude there. So I think I'm going to play less captain. I don't know that I'm going to play any. I'm going to play less defense. I don't think I'm going to play any defense captain. I think that bill is going to be too over-owned tonight. Let's see, what do I have captain ownership at? Let's see. We've got captain ownership. Wow, that seems honestly modest. I'm going to guess that the captain ownership is higher on both of these teams. I'm going to guess both get closer to 10, if not slightly higher. And then the flex, 25%, right? So they come out negative leverage across the board. I don't know that I can. I will play some of them definitely in the flex. Don't think I'll be playing either in the captain. No kicker captain for me either. If I lose to another fucking kicker captain, I lose to another fucking kicker captain. It happens. But I'll be playing all those in the flex. I'm probably going to limit to maybe 2 or 3 max of the 4 in any given lineup. But otherwise, I don't know that I'll have any hard and fast rules this slate. I don't think I'll play Brian Robinson and J.D. McKissick together. I think they succeed in just different scripts. I think Brian Robinson succeeds in a Commander's leading script, and J.D. McKissick in a Commander's trailing script. So probably won't play those guys together. Same with Khalil Herbert and Montgomery. I probably don't play them together either. I think Montgomery succeeds, and if he gets hurt, which you never want to bet on, I think then it would be Khalil Herbert's turn. But I think they showed the right just to flip right back to him. So wouldn't play those guys together. Otherwise, I don't know that there's any rules I would necessarily make in terms of limiting guys together. If you got any questions, we have 2 more minutes. I'm going to jump off, eat some dinner, and get back on and make my lineups to burn my dollars. So let me know if you got a question. I think I've got everything in this chat. All right. Thoughts on the FanDuel slate? Man, I can't necessarily encourage anyone to play the FanDuel slate. Their single game showdown is it's not a beatable game long term. That said, if you want to play it, I think it's a chance to get different. I think you can play. Oh man, that's rough. I'm guessing Montgomery will be by far the highest owned captain over there, so maybe take a slightly less higher owned since there's no multiplier. You just play the best plays, right? So I think I might like Brian Robinson captain. You can pivot off that, or you could do Wentz captain. I guess his ownership probably gets suppressed with his arm stuff. If you're playing defense, is it better to roster a kicker from the same team or opposite team? That's interesting. I actually don't. I don't want to just guess. I hate to give you a bad answer here. I'm wondering if Cody or anyone has done research into that. I'm trying to think off my head if I've read any other articles on that. My hunch would be that you would want your kicker from the same. No, my hunch would be you'd actually want it from the other team if you're playing one other positional player, because it'd be hard for 2 positional players to get there with only versus the defense. But I think if you're playing a 5-1, I think you'd want your kicker from the same side as your defense. If you're playing a 4-2, I think you'd want your kicker from the opposite side. That is a complete hunch. And I will write down a note to look I feel like I've read kicker with or opposed defense. I feel like I've read something, and I'll see if I can find something for you. I wish I had a better answer for you. Rockford Solo, thank you, man. It's nerve-wracking as shit, I gotta tell you. Good luck, fam. Great job, John. Good job, John. Thank y'all. Best stream ever. Don't tell Dude that. Oh, shit, he's gonna watch this and be angry. All right, I'm gonna stop streaming now. Y'all rock. Later.